This is the case of Lara Paige Coonley. On March 15, 1978, a beautiful girl named Lara was born in the United States, who was the third child of Carleen Coonley and her husband James Perry Coonley. Lara grew up with her sisters, with whom she was friendly, and their parents gave their children love and care. Everything ended when, after a series of scandals, Carleen and James eventually divorced. The girl was still a teenager at the time. Apparently, Lara strongly experienced the separation of parents and at some point began to seek solace in alcohol, and later became addicted to psychotropic substances. At least that's what her mother thought, for whom her daughter's addiction problems were a consequence of her failed marriage. Carleen, who is another main character in our story, was born on June 13, 1945, in Virginia. For her, her three daughters were a priority and she felt responsible for everything that happened to them. And in fact, Carleen blamed herself for the effect her divorce from her husband had on her daughter Lara, who was the youngest in the family. This guilt drove Carleen to justify what Lara was doing. Her mother was always sympathetic to her daughter, always looking for ways to intervene and support her, especially when the girl faced difficulties. Other family members and loved ones witnessed Lara's irritable nature and her obvious need for attention on more than one occasion, while Carleen's other daughters eventually started their own families and became independent. Lara, even after 2 decades since her parents' divorce, was still living in the family home in Kentucky, unemployed, and demanding constant attention for herself. Even when the girl had a boyfriend at one point, he too had moved into the house with Lara and Carleen. Lara was convinced that she was suffering from a mental illness and constantly sought medical help to be prescribed psychotropic drugs. However, there came a point when medical professionals stopped providing her with this type of medication. The young woman, desperate to get the drugs she needed, began breaking into her neighbors' homes to steal any pills she found along the way. Lara often abused her mother's good character by constantly calling her at work and bothering her for minor reasons, which eventually led to Carleen having to leave her job. During 2008, Lara was convicted of a misdemeanor shoplifting offense, but she was released very quickly, all because her mother bailed her out. Unfortunately, the situation got worse and worse. The daughter's verbal abuse of her mother gradually escalated to physical abuse. Even though Lara hurt her on several occasions, Carleen was unwilling to complain about her daughter and did not kick her out of the house. There was a case where, after one incident, specialist intervention was required to assess Lara's mental health, and the mother welcomed her daughter back into her home because she felt that even in this situation she had a duty of care to her. This behavior is not unusual for parents who are victims of violence by daughters and sons. They hesitate to report the assaults, thinking about supporting their children and not damaging the relationship further. But the truth is, this is risky behavior that puts your own safety at risk. Now Lara's violent outbursts were not just directed at the woman who gave her life. Her uncontrollable behavior and rage began to manifest towards her boyfriend, whose name was Chris Lung, and on 2 occasions Lara was put on trial for her attacks on him. One of those assaults occurred in late October 2014. On that occasion, Lara woke Chris up while he was sleeping and accused him of infidelity. The couple started an argument that escalated into physical violence. Then, in addition to biting him, the woman took a kitchen knife with which she inflicted her partner with a shallow wound on one of his arms. That event earned Lara a misdemeanor conviction and a commitment to attend anger management therapy. According to court records, though, there was no evidence that Lara continued to attend. Despite the fact that the woman had passed the age of 35 by then, she did not correct her behavior. A few months later, on January 7, 2015, Lara was arrested again, this time for biting her boyfriend's finger when he tried to prevent an assault on Carleen. He couldn't understand the hatred that Lara had built up against Carleen. The woman had always been a loving mother, devoted to her children, 3 daughters and 5 grandchildren of whom she was very proud. Carleen spared no effort to take care of Lara and give her what she thought she needed to help her daughter through her problems. Unfortunately, her devotion, unconditional love, and good intentions did not prevent her daughter's cruelty to her mother from steadily escalating. On March 14, 2015, Lara called 911 to notify authorities of an incident at the Carleen home. The woman told the operator that there had been a home invasion at their home that resulted in her mother being fatally wounded. Immediately, officers from the Independence, Taylor Mill, and Covington police departments responded to the call and showed up on the scene. Upon entering the Carlin Conley residence, they were confronted with a horrifying scene. Lara was covered in blood while Carlin, a 69-year-old woman, lay on the kitchen floor with no signs of life and multiple stab wounds. The lawman asked Lara what happened, and she said she did not remember because she had lost consciousness. However, she said that 2 hours earlier several people had knocked on the door asking for treats, which is a common occurrence on Halloween, but the holiday was still a long way off. Lara provided police with various descriptions of the suspects, which formed the basis for a search to begin, after setting up a perimeter cordon in the neighborhood. However, the operation was inconclusive. Authorities did not find anyone who matched the features suggested by the witness. To deepen the investigation, officers brought Lara to the police station. During the interrogation, more information about the alleged attackers emerged, but in addition, the woman presented new elements. For example, she said she was being persecuted because of her debts to traffickers with illegal substances. Lara also gave detectives conflicting versions about the circumstances under which she discovered her mother's body. She first said that when she came home, she found Carlene dead. Later, during the same conversation, she claimed that when she woke up after sleeping in the basement, she climbed the stairs and found her mother lifeless on the kitchen floor. Detectives Mike Richmond and Jamie Moore of the Independence Police Department led the investigation. Based on their experience and knowledge, they connected Lara to the crime within hours of beginning the investigation. It was obvious that the woman had lied to police with her statement about the event. The evidence allowed them to state that there had been no break-in. They also found no fingerprints on the doors and windows that would suggest the presence of intruders. All of this led to the conclusion that the victim's daughter was the only person in the house at the time of her mother's murder. Thus, in the early morning hours of Sunday, March 15th, as the suspect was celebrating her 37th birthday, authorities arrested her for Carlin's murder. The next day, Monday, March 16th, Lara appeared before a judge via video link. She testified that she did not plead guilty. However, authorities detained Lara Paige Coonley and sent her to the county jail for detention without bail on charges of murder and domestic violence. She was also banned from contact with her boyfriend. According to prosecutor Rob Sanders, Carlin's murder will undoubtedly have a strong impact on the neighborhood community because it was a fairly quiet place with a low crime rate. He added that looking at the event from a domestic violence perspective, it was a demonstration that such a calamity can happen in any community and at any time. Rob said the case is still under investigation, but he cannot guarantee if the full story of what happened and what motivated the accused to commit such a horrific crime will ever be known. From the medical examiner's report, it was revealed that there was some brutality to the attack Carlin suffered. The autopsy revealed that the woman was stabbed 77 times. She also had 27 stab wounds and 2 bite wounds. On March 24th, Lara appeared before a judge and said she had no money, property, or assets, so she could not afford an attorney. The judge then appointed a public defender for her and began the hearing. During his testimony in court, Detective Michael Richmond of the Independence Police Department said there were no signs of forced entry at the scene. He explained that Lara was the one who opened the door to let police officers in and that she was the only person in the house other than the victim. Continuing his story, the detective reported that, inside the room, they found Carlin on the kitchen floor surrounded by several knives. As for Lara, Michael stated that when he saw the woman, she was covered in blood. There was blood not only on her shirt and arms, but also on her legs and even on her face, on her lips and nose. After hearing the police testimony, the judge took the case to a grand jury, which indicted the perpetrator for murder on April 16, 2015. Lara's trial began 1 year and 9 months after the crime, namely on January 3, 2017. During the trial, presided over by the judge, the jury heard testimony from about 30 witnesses. The assistant prosecutors bolstered their case with testimonies from police officers from various agencies involved in the investigation, as well as relatives of the victim. The defense argued that her client acted in self-defense while in a state of extreme emotional distress. According to the defense attorney, the knife attack was a stress response to the assault by her mother. When Lara testified in her defense, she told the jury that she and her mother were arguing about how Lara used to celebrate her birthday. At that time, her mother picked up a heavy object and struck her daughter in the head. The defendant claimed that she did not remember anything about what happened after she received this blow. Even of her 911 call, the jury knew that during the physical examination performed on Lara after the crime, experts confirmed that she had cuts on her head and back, plus bruises on her body and a hematoma under her eye. When Lara was cross-examined, the defendant said she was not sure if she feared for her life when she killed her mother because she could not remember it. On March 23, 2017, the parties presented their closing arguments. Assistant District Attorney Lawrence outlined to the jury the evidence in the case and the numerous conflicting uncorroborated versions of the defendant's story. That same day, after 3 hours of deliberation, the jury found Lara Paige Coonley guilty of first-degree murder and recommended that she be sentenced to 27 years in prison. Before the verdict was announced, the victim's relatives filed their own statements about Lara's influence on her mother. Virginia, as much Carlin's daughter as the defendant, said her sister was ugly and sick to the bone. One of Virginia Taylor's daughters spoke sharply to her aunt, who could not help making a gesture of disapproval on hearing her. The girl assured that her Aunt Lara was a horrible person and guaranteed that she would celebrate the day she died. Judge Leek sentenced Lara to 27 years in prison at the request of the jury and another of Carlin's daughters, and commented that her sister was not a normal person, while denying that their mother was abusive. Thus, she moved on to claiming that their mother was not the perpetrator of the fight. In the same vein, she assured that her mother had never raised her hand against her sister, and therefore some of the things said during the trial about their mother were hurtful. The woman added that they would like their mother to be remembered as the loving woman she was. Toward the end, and said the guilty verdict was a relief to them. Lara's defense filed an appeal asking for a new trial. The defense attorneys argued that the conviction against Lara was invalid because she was denied an appeal in which the woman requested funds to hire a mental health expert to confirm Lara's illnesses, namely various mental illnesses including bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. In the said appeal, the defense also told the court that in the days leading up to the incident, the woman had consumed large amounts of alcohol and a nausea medication that is supposed to induce drowsiness. Despite this mixture, she had not slept for 3 or 4 days. The judge, despite all these arguments, dismissed the appeal and ordered that the defendant be evaluated by experts to be appointed by the court. After reading the report submitted by the experts, the original judgment of the court was reversed. Albeit belatedly, it was decided that Lara was indeed entitled to an independent expert. Among other things, the defense also insisted that the preliminary trial be overturned and a new trial held, calling it a mistake that caused Lara to be found guilty. The prosecutor's office was allowed to introduce into evidence a previous assault committed by the accused. In a June 2019 ruling, the Kentucky Supreme Court concluded that the trial court committed errors. This decision reversed Lara's 27-year prison sentence for the murder of her mother and remanded the case for a new trial. Although Lara secured the opportunity to stand trial again, she decided to forego a retrial and signed a plea agreement that reduced her sentence to 20 years so that she will be able to get out of prison on parole in 2032. This is simply shocking. Lara is currently incarcerated at the Kentucky Correctional Institution for Women. For Carlin's loved ones, Lara's conviction meant the end of the story, but they assured that their family will never be the same again. Carlin's daughters will continue to live their lives without counting on their mother's affectionate words and hugs, and her grandchildren will continue to grow up deprived of the company and affection of their proud and loving grandmother. In addition, the fact that a family member is responsible for Carlin's horrific death overshadows the entire horror story even more. Lara killed her own mother and showed no signs of remorse for her actions, and the question of why remains unanswered. What's more, even after 10 years, she will be able to go free. Imagine that. Unfortunately, not all sentences are fair. Thanks for watching. I recommend you check out the rest of our other Trump stories as well. Click right now, and don't forget to activate the bell so you don't miss new stories. See you soon. Take care.